Imagine being humiliated in front of everyone, slapped, mocked, treated like nothing. But what if the person you're hurting the most has a secret no one sees? Her son is the billionaire CEO of the company. Watch how arrogance meets justice, and kindness wins in the most shocking twist. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready for one of the most powerful stories you've ever heard. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Turn on the notification bell to support more inspiring stories like this one.
Subscribe for more content.
The early morning sun stretched lazily across the city of Lagos, painting the tall buildings in gold. Mama Grace walked slowly down the busy street that led to Sunix Global Holdings, one of the biggest companies in the city. Her shoes were old, her wrapper faded, but her back was straight, and her steps carried quiet pride. When she reached the company gate, she smiled warmly at the security guard standing tall in his uniform. "Good morning, my son," she greeted softly. The young man turned, surprised by her calm and respectful tone. "Good morning, Mama," he replied cheerfully. "First time here?" "Yes," Mama Grace nodded. "They told me to report here today. I am the new cleaner." The guard smiled. "Ah, welcome, Mama. My name is Tunde. You're in the right place. Just go straight inside. You'll see the reception by the right." Mama Grace chuckled gently. "Thank you, Tunde. God bless your work, my son." As she walked into the company compound, her eyes observed everything: the shiny cars, the glass doors, the workers rushing with laptops and coffee. Some barely noticed her. Others looked away, pretending she didn't exist. But she was not here to be noticed. She was here for something greater, a secret only she and her heart knew. Once upon a time, Mama Grace had been one of the richest women in Lagos. Her late husband had built companies that fed many families. But after his death, her only son, David, had taken over everything and grown even wealthier, a respected CEO, admired and powerful. Yet there was one thing Mama Grace wanted more than all the wealth in the world: a daughter-in-law who loved her son, not his money. Tired of fake smiles and gold-digging hearts, she had made a decision that shocked even her son. She would disguise herself as a poor cleaner and secretly observe people in his company. Only then would she see who truly had a kind heart. As she entered the reception, she saw a young lady at the desk. The lady smiled politely. "Good morning, Mama. How may I help you?" Mama Grace smiled back. "Good morning, my daughter. I am the new cleaner." The girl's eyes lit up. "Oh, you must be Mama Grace. HR said you'd be coming. Welcome." "I'm Amaka." "God bless you, Amaka," Mama Grace said warmly. "Your smile is medicine." But just then the door opened, and Miss Brenda, the company's manager, walked in sharply in high heels. Her face was stiff, her eyes cold. Her gaze landed on Mama Grace like a knife. "So this is the new cleaner?" she asked harshly. "Yes, Ma," Amaka replied softly. Brenda folded her arms. Listen carefully, old woman. This is a corporate place. No gossiping. No resting, no delay. And please," she sniffed mockingly, "try not to smell like poverty." Amaka's mouth fell open. "Madam," she whispered. But Mama Grace only bowed slightly. "Yes, Ma, I understand," Brenda hissed and walked off. As silence returned, Amaka's eyes glistened. "Mama, I'm sorry for how she spoke." Mama Grace smiled faintly. "Don't worry, my child. Dignity doesn't depend on how people treat you. It lives inside." And with that, the humble cleaner began her new journey, unaware that her quiet presence would soon expose the arrogance hidden within those glass walls. The next morning came quietly. The sound of brooms brushing floors echoed softly across the wide marble hall of Sunix Global Holdings. Mama Grace bent slowly, cleaning every corner with care, humming an old gospel tune under her breath. The workers began to arrive, heels clicking and perfume filling the air. Most of them ignored her, walking past as if she were invisible. Only Amaka, the receptionist, would always stop to greet her. "Mama Grace, good morning." "You came so early again." Amaka smiled warmly. Mama Grace looked up, her wrinkled face glowing with gratitude. Good morning, my daughter. When you wake up early, blessings meet you before others do. They both laughed softly, but their laughter was cut short when the sharp voice of Miss Brenda, the manager, sliced through the air. Amaka, what are you doing there? Is this a chatting ground or a company? Amaka quickly straightened up. Sorry, Ma, I was just what? Brenda snapped. Talking to a cleaner? Are you jobless? Mama Grace bowed her head, pretending not to hear, but her heart hurt. Not for herself, but for the kind young girl being scolded for showing simple respect. Brenda strutted closer, her designer shoes clicking loudly. You, she pointed at Mama Grace, you missed a spot there yesterday. Look at that corner. Is that how you cleaned in your village? Amaka gasped. Madam, please, keep quiet, Brenda barked. Then, turning back to Mama Grace, she added cruelly, if you can't do your work, tell me now. We can easily find another old woman who needs money. Mama Grace's broom trembled in her hand, but she remained calm. I will do better, Ma, she said quietly. Brenda smirked. Good. And make sure next time you greet me properly when I walk in. I don't want to be sharing the same air with laziness. When Brenda finally walked off, laughter from a few other workers followed her, shallow and nervous. Amaka turned to Mama Grace, tears in her eyes. Mama, I'm so sorry. She shouldn't talk to you like that. Mama Grace smiled faintly. My daughter, don't cry. Some people mock others because they don't understand what humility is. Just keep being kind. That afternoon, as the workers went for lunch, Mama Grace stayed behind in the hallway. Unknown to everyone, a tall man in a black suit entered the building quietly. His presence commanded respect, Mr. David Adeoye, the Billionaire CEO himself. He stopped when he saw the old cleaner scrubbing the floor on her knees. Who is that? He asked Tunde, the guard. Tunde smiled. That's Mama Grace, sir, our new cleaner. She's hard-working and very humble. David's eyes softened. Really? He murmured. Something about her posture, the gentleness in her movements, tugged at his heart. He turned away quickly, hiding a faint smile. He had agreed to keep her disguise a secret, but seeing her like this made his chest tighten with pride and sorrow at once. As he walked to his office, Miss Brenda ran after him. Good morning, sir, she said sweetly, bowing slightly. You're welcome, sir, David barely nodded. Morning. Brenda smiled proudly, thinking her charm was working, not knowing that the poor cleaner she had just mocked was his mother. The morning sun poured through the tall glass windows of Sunex Global Holdings, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Mama Grace moved quietly along the executive corridor, her broom gliding softly, leaving behind spotless corners. Though the work was exhausting, she never complained. Every sweep was a lesson in patience, every polished surface a reminder that dignity does not bow to insult. Amaka, the receptionist, watched her from behind the desk, admiration shining in her eyes. Mama, you never rush and you never complain, she whispered. Most people would have broken by now. Mama Grace smiled faintly. My daughter, strength comes from the heart, not from wealth or youth. Even in silence, one can teach others more than they ever realize. But the calm morning soon turned tense. In the main boardroom, Miss Brenda had called an emergency meeting. The HR officer, the heads of departments, and a few senior staff gathered nervously. Brenda's face was pale with fury. She slapped the cleaner. Brenda fumed, pointing at an imaginary figure. And the security guard, that insolent man, he dared to push me back. He must be fired immediately. The HR officer raised a hand cautiously. Miss Brenda, perhaps we should hear his side of the story. The security guard claims he only defended the lady. Lies, Brenda shouted, cutting him off. I am the manager here. My word is final. That man and that old woman are troublemakers. They have no place in this company. Meanwhile, Mama Grace, unaware of the meeting, continued her rounds. She wiped down the elevators, polished the chairs, and cleaned the windows with meticulous care. Though her back ached and her hands were rough with labor, she moved with grace, as if the humiliation from Brenda had not touched her. David, the CEO, watched the proceedings through the CCTV feed from his office. His eyes narrowed as he saw Brenda's fury, the HR officer's hesitation, and the staff's fearful silence. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Tunde would never act without reason, and Mama Grace, she was too kind to provoke trouble. After a few minutes, David called the HR officer on a secure line. "Do not fire them," he ordered calmly but firmly. "I've made the decision. Tunde returns to his post tomorrow. The cleaner remains. Understood?" The HR officer hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" "Miss Brenda will do as I say," David interrupted, his voice cold. "She will learn the hard way that power without wisdom is meaningless." Back in the hall, Mama Grace was helping a young intern clean a coffee spill. "Dab gently," she instructed. "Do not rub. Clean hands and clean heart go together." The intern, surprised by her patience, nodded eagerly. At that moment, Brenda stormed past them, muttering curses under her breath. She didn't notice that her arrogance had already begun to crack the walls around her. A secret force, unseen but powerful, was watching every step. Mama Grace paused for a moment, brushing a window. She whispered softly to herself, "Pride always falls, and kindness always rises." And in that quiet moment, the balance of power within the company had begun to shift. By the fourth day, the atmosphere at Sunix Global Holdings was tense. The staff whispered in corners, eyes darting nervously toward Miss Brenda, who walked the halls like a storm waiting to break. Her face was flushed with anger, her every movement sharp and deliberate. She had lost the element of surprise, and the thought gnawed at her pride. Mama Grace, meanwhile, moved with the same quiet determination. She had learned to ignore insults, focusing only on the work at hand. Her hands scrubbed floors and polished furniture, while her mind remained calm. Each task was done with care, each corner left spotless. To her, cleaning was not just a job. It was a test of patience, a lesson in dignity. Amaka watched from the reception desk. "Mama, please be careful today," she whispered. "I heard Miss Brenda didn't sleep well. She quarreled with her boyfriend last night. She's in an even worse mood than usual." Mama Grace smiled faintly, brushing off the warning. "Fear only grows when it is fed. I will not feed it, my daughter." But Brenda did not need to be warned. Her fury had built over days of perceived disrespect. That morning she stormed to the company gate, her heels clicking like warning drums. Her eyes locked on Mama Grace, who was mopping the entrance with slow, methodical strokes. "There you are," Brenda shouted. "You are the reason my life is miserable. You bring bad luck wherever you go." Mama Grace froze, but only briefly. "How is that my business, Ma?" she asked softly. Brenda's face twisted in rage. "How dare you speak to me like that, you poor, useless old woman?" And without warning, she raised her hand and slapped Mama Grace across the face. The sound echoed through the entrance. Tunde, standing nearby, could no longer hold his anger. He stepped forward and grabbed Brenda's wrist firmly. "Enough," he shouted. "You cannot treat her like this. She is old enough to be your mother, and you are manaless and cruel." The crowd of staff grew silent. Some gasped. Others whispered among themselves. No one had ever seen Tunde speak like this. Brenda stumbled back in shock. "How dare you? You will pay for this insolence," she screamed, red-faced. Within the hour, a board meeting was called. Brenda told her story, painting Tunde as the aggressor, the villain, and Mama Grace as a troublesome old woman. Despite Tunde's calm explanations, her words dominated. The HR officer hesitated, unsure. "Perhaps we should consider," Brenda cut him off. "No, they are fired. Immediately. Remove them from the premises." Mama Grace's heart sank, but her dignity remained. She walked to Tunde's small guard post, where he was quietly packing his belongings. "My son," she said softly, her eyes wet. "Why did you defend me? Now you've lost your job." Tunde shook his head. "Mama, I could not watch her harm you. She is wicked, and I will not stand by. Losing a job is nothing compared to standing for what is right." Mama Grace placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "I know, my son. But sometimes defending the innocent comes at a cost. Pray that God rewards your heart. They embraced, the bond between them clear to everyone watching. A lesson had been taught in silence. Courage and kindness are more powerful than wealth or arrogance. The day after Tunde was fired, the office of Synex Global Holdings felt heavier. Staff whispered nervously, casting glances at Miss Brenda, who walked the halls like a queen scorned. She smirked at every passing employee, convinced her power was unchallenged. But not everyone was afraid. Amaka, the young receptionist, had watched the incident unfold the day before. She had seen Tunde's courage, Mama Grace's quiet strength, and Brenda's cruel arrogance. Her heart burned with indignation, and she knew she could not stay silent. During the mid-morning break, Amaka approached the reception counter. She saw Brenda standing nearby, organizing papers, her face still red with anger from the previous day. Amaka took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice was firm. "Miss Brenda," she called, stepping forward. "May I speak with you?" Brenda looked up, raising an eyebrow. "What do you want, receptionist? Shouldn't you be at your desk?" Amaka swallowed her fear. "I cannot stay silent after what happened yesterday. You slapped Mama Grace and fired Tunde, a man who only defended her. How dare you?" The office grew still. Staff peeked from their cubicles, mouths slightly open. None dared to interrupt, but they all wanted to hear her speak. Brenda's face turned red, shock and fury mixing. "How dare you talk to me like that? I am the manager." "Yes, Ma," Amaka replied, standing tall. "You are the manager, but that does not give you the right to insult, humiliate, or harm anyone. You mistreated Mama Grace and you dismissed a man who only acted out of respect and honor. Shame on you." Brenda's jaw tightened. "I should fire you immediately." "You have no place questioning me," Amaka did not falter. "Fire me if you must, but I will leave with my dignity intact." "Can you say the same about yourself? You walk around with fine clothes, but inside you are empty. Your arrogance has blinded you to decency." The staff gasped softly. Whispers passed like wind through the office. No one had dared speak to Brenda this way before. Before Brenda could react, Amaka's phone buzzed. She stepped aside and quietly dialed a direct line, the CEO's personal number. Within moments, she returned calmly. "Miss Brenda," Amaka said firmly, "you will not fire Tunde, and Mama Grace will continue her work. The decision comes from the top. I suggest you remember this day." Brenda froze, her face turning white. She stammered, tried to argue, but no one answered her. She realized the power she thought she had was slipping, and for the first time, fear replaced her arrogance. Amaka returned to her desk, her heart still racing. Mama Grace, unaware of the confrontation, continued cleaning. But deep inside, a quiet wave of hope had begun to spread. Kindness and courage, even from the youngest and humblest, could shake the foundation of arrogance. The following morning at Synex Global Holdings, tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Miss Brenda arrived early, her steps sharp and deliberate. She believed she had regained control, but the memory of Amaka's bold words lingered, and it gnawed at her pride. Mama Grace moved quietly through the halls, her broom in hand, cleaning with the same gentle care as always. She ignored the stares and whispered comments from the staff. Even after the slap, she had refused to let anger take root in her heart. Each swipe of the cloth reminded her that dignity could not be stripped away by cruelty. Meanwhile, Amaka had already prepared herself. The receptionist understood the weight of her responsibility. Tunde had been unfairly punished, and Mama Grace had endured humiliation for nothing. Today she vowed she would ensure justice, even if she had to face Brenda's wrath again. At precisely 9 a.m., Brenda stormed through the lobby, her designer heels clicking like a warning signal. Her eyes scanned the employees, daring anyone to challenge her authority. When they reached Mama Grace, she sneered. "Old woman," she spat, "I warned you to move faster. You are slowing the company down with your useless cleaning. Do you want to be fired again?" Mama Grace looked up, her calm eyes meeting Brenda's furious gaze. "Ma," she said softly, "I am here to serve, not to please your vanity. I clean with care because respect matters more than fear." Brenda's face contorted with rage. "You dare speak to me this way? I will have you removed." Before Brenda could make a move, Amaka stepped between them. "Stop," she shouted, her voice steady and loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "You have no right to treat her like this. What you call power is nothing but cruelty. Everyone here has seen how you behave. You humiliate, you insult, you harm, and you call it authority?" Brenda froze. For the first time, the manager's confidence faltered. The staff stopped what they were doing and watched the confrontation in silence. Amaka continued, her voice unwavering. "Your arrogance blinds you to the truth. Mama Grace is not your inferior. Tunde is not your enemy. The CEO himself has intervened. You do not decide who is fired or who stays. Power without wisdom is meaningless, and cruelty will always be punished, whether by God or by the people you hurt." A murmur ran through the staff. Whispers of admiration for Amaka's courage filled the hall. Even some of Brenda's allies looked uneasy. Brenda, unable to find words, clenched her fists and stormed back to her office, slamming the door behind her. For the first time, the echo of her own power sounded empty. Mama Grace lowered her head and continued cleaning, but she felt a small spark of relief. Change had begun, not with wealth or authority, but with the bravery of one young girl who refused to stay silent. Tunde, standing by the gate watching from a distance, allowed himself a quiet smile. The ripple of justice had begun. The office of Sunex Global Holdings had never been quieter. The whispers of the previous day still lingered in the hallways, and staff moved with careful steps, as if the atmosphere itself had shifted. Miss Brenda, once the unchallenged ruler of the executive floor, now walked with measured caution, her pride bruised and her face pale. Mama Grace continued her rounds, her movements calm and deliberate. She scrubbed, polished, and organized, leaving the floor spotless. Every corner reflected her patience and resilience. To an outsider, she appeared fragile, an old woman performing simple work. But inside her, a quiet strength glowed, shaped by years of endurance and unshakable dignity. Amaka observed Mama Grace from her desk, her eyes filled with admiration. "Mama, I cannot understand how you keep going after all she has done," she whispered. Mama Grace smiled faintly. "My daughter, endurance is a shield. Anger and revenge only weigh the soul down. The world will punish arrogance in its own time. We need only remain true to ourselves." Brenda, however, was unraveling. Her anger, once a force that controlled the office, had become a trap. In her attempt to assert dominance, she had alienated the staff. They avoided her, no longer willing to participate in her cruelty. Even the junior employees who once flattered her whispered about her arrogance in hushed tones. The breaking point came during a high-profile meeting. The board of directors had gathered to review company performance. Brenda presented her report with her usual flair, her voice sharp, but her colleagues' expressions betrayed skepticism. The CEO, Mr. David Adeoye, entered quietly, unnoticed by Brenda. He listened silently as she boasted about her leadership and dismissed concerns raised by department heads. Finally, he spoke. "Brenda," he said calmly, "your report is thorough, but your behavior towards staff has been unacceptable. Humility and respect are as important as results. The way you treated Tunde and Mama Grace is intolerable." Brenda froze, her face draining of color. "Sir?" "Aye. You are relieved of all managerial duties effective immediately," David continued, his voice firm. "You will not return to this floor until you have learned the value of kindness and respect." Gasps filled the room. Staff exchanged shocked looks, some daring to smile in relief. Brenda's mouth opened, but no words came. The fall of her pride was complete. Her arrogance had finally met its match. Outside the boardroom, Mama Grace continued her cleaning, unaware that justice had been served. Amaka rushed to her side, her eyes shining. "Mama, she's been removed from the executive floor. The CEO himself made the decision." Mama Grace nodded gently, her heart calm. "Let her learn, my daughter. Pride falls when the heart is empty. The world has its ways of balancing justice." Tunde, watching from the security post, allowed himself a quiet sigh of relief. The seeds of change were taking root, and soon the company would know the value of humility, kindness, and integrity. The week that followed brought a quiet relief to Cenex Global Holdings. Brenda's removal from the executive floor had lifted a shadow from the staff, and Tunde quietly resumed his duties as the security officer. His presence now met with respect and gratitude. Mama Grace continued her cleaning, her hands steady, her heart at peace, or so she thought. That morning, a small accident changed everything. As she polished the long corridor on the executive floor, her foot slipped on the wet surface. She fell heavily, the sharp pain shooting through her leg. Staff who heard the noise rushed to her side. Mama, are you okay?" Amaka cried, kneeling beside her. Mama Grace groaned softly, unable to move. Her leg throbbed fiercely, and tears filled her eyes, though she refused to cry aloud. The staff immediately called for help, and within minutes, an ambulance arrived to rush her to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctors examined her carefully. The X-rays revealed a severe fracture, one that required surgery to ensure she could walk again. The cost of the operation, however, was overwhelming. 11 million naira. Amaka's face turned pale. How will I get that much? I don't even earn enough to cover half of it," she whispered, panic rising in her chest. But she refused to give in to despair. Mama Grace had always taught her that courage and determination mattered more than fear. "I don't care if I have to sell everything I own," Amaka muttered, her eyes blazing with resolve. Mama Grace's life is more important than land, money, or comfort. Meanwhile, Mama Grace's eyes fluttered open. Weak but conscious, she recognized her son Joseph standing by her bedside, worry etched into every line of his face. "Mother, this is getting out of hand," Joseph said firmly. "You cannot keep pretending. This was never part of the plan. You could have been seriously hurt today." Mama Grace smiled faintly, her voice soft. "My son, I have learned much already. I have seen pride, arrogance, kindness, and sacrifice. Slipping today is only a reminder that even in disguise I remain human." Joseph shook his head, conflicted. "Mother, enough. I cannot allow this anymore. You must stop. The risk is too great." Mama Grace reached out and placed a weak hand over his. "Joseph, sometimes to find the truth in people, one must step into the world unseen. I have seen hearts that shine and hearts that are dark, and even though I fell, the lessons are worth it." Meanwhile, Amaka ran through the hospital corridors, determined to find a way to raise the money. She had inherited a small piece of land from her late parents. She resolved that she would sell it if necessary. Nothing was more important than saving Mama Grace. As Joseph watched the scene unfold, a realization struck him. The kindness and courage of others, those like Tunde, Mama Grace, and Amaka, were the real wealth in this world. And soon, the world around them would bear witness to that truth. The afternoon sun streamed through the hospital windows, casting warm rays across the white floors as Amaka paced nervously. The enormity of the situation weighed heavily on her young shoulders. Mama Grace's surgery was critical. Without it, the kind old woman might never walk again. The sum of 11 million naira loomed like an impossible mountain. Amaka gritted her teeth, her mind racing. She had inherited a small plot of land from her late parents, modest in size but valuable enough to cover at least part of the surgery. Her heart ached at the thought of selling it. It had been her connection to her parents, a memory of happier times. Yet Mama Grace's life mattered far more than property or sentiment. Without wasting another moment, Amaka left the hospital and rushed to the land registry office. Her steps were hurried, each pounding heartbeat echoing her determination. The clerks, noticing the urgency in her eyes, quickly assisted her. After hours of paperwork, signatures, and phone calls, the land was officially sold, and she had the funds in hand. Returning to the hospital, she handed the money to the accountant handling the surgery. The doctors accepted it without hesitation, scheduling the operation immediately. Amaka exhaled, her body trembling with relief, but her spirit was strong. She had risked everything for someone who had given her so much guidance, love, and inspiration. Back in the hospital room, Mama Grace lay quietly, her eyes half closed, sensing the urgency in the air. Joseph paced anxiously beside her bed, unaware of Amaka's swift action. When the nurse arrived to inform him that the funds had been secured, his jaw dropped. "Amaka, you sold your land for her?" he asked incredulously. Amaka nodded, her eyes shining with resolve. "Yes, Joseph, she is like a mother to me. I cannot sit and watch while her life is at risk. I will do whatever it takes." Joseph shook his head, torn between admiration and disbelief. "You are remarkable, Amaka. This is true sacrifice. Mama Grace will be saved because of you." The surgery began promptly. Doctors moved swiftly with practiced hands and focused minds. Every stitch, every careful maneuver was a lifeline, ensuring Mama Grace could walk again. Meanwhile, Amaka and Joseph waited, their hearts heavy with worry but buoyed by hope. Hours later, the head doctor emerged. "The operation was successful," he announced. "She is stable, and with proper care, she will recover fully. The next few weeks will be critical, but she has a chance to walk again." Tears of relief streamed down Amaka's cheeks. Joseph placed a hand on hers. "You did this. Your courage and sacrifice saved her life. I cannot thank you enough." Mama Grace, waking slowly from anesthesia, opened her eyes. Though still weak, her smile radiated warmth. She reached for Amaka's hand. "My daughter, your heart shines brighter than gold. God will reward you." In that moment, the hospital room was filled with gratitude, love, and hope. A young girl's courage and selflessness had turned despair into salvation. Days passed slowly in the hospital as Mama Grace began her recovery. Her leg was bandaged, the pain still present, but her spirit remained unbroken. Amaka stayed by her side, tending to her every need, bringing meals, water, and comfort whenever she could. Joseph, Mama Grace's son, had been visiting daily, but a storm of thoughts churned in his mind. He had always known his mother to be strong, wise, and enduring. Yet the events of the past weeks, her fall, the humiliation at the company, the courage of Tunde and Amaka, had awakened a new realization in him. His mother had not only been a teacher of life to him, but a beacon of integrity that touched everyone she met. One evening, as the hospital corridor grew quiet and the sun set, Joseph sat at the edge of Mama Grace's bed. She smiled weakly at him. "My son," she said softly, "you look troubled. What weighs on your heart?" Joseph hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Mother, I've watched you endure so much, hiding your true identity, working quietly, observing others. I have always known you as wise and patient, but now I see you have done more than endure. You've taught courage, dignity, and kindness to people who would otherwise never learn it." Mama Grace chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling. "Joseph, sometimes the world must be observed from the shadows to truly understand its hearts. I sought to find those who were genuine and to reveal the truth in those who thought wealth and status were the measure of all things." Joseph leaned back, still processing her words. "And Tunde, the security officer, you spoke of him as if he were more than he seemed." Mama Grace nodded. "Tunde's heart is pure. He acted with honor, courage, and respect. That is a treasure far greater than gold. Never mistake position or money for the measure of a man." Joseph's mind raced. He had always assumed that the world would respect him for his name, his wealth, and his status. But now he understood that integrity, courage, and selflessness carried far more weight. Looking out the hospital window, Joseph's gaze hardened with determination. "Mother, when you recover, I will ensure that Sunix Global Holdings reflects the values you have lived by. No one will humiliate another for their social class, and no act of kindness will go unrewarded. This company will honor character above all else." Mama Grace placed a gentle hand on his cheek. "Joseph, your heart is awakening. Let it guide you. But remember, it is not only about the company. It is about the people you meet every day. Treat them with respect, and they will follow your lead. Wealth can open doors, but integrity keeps them open. Joseph nodded, a fire igniting in his chest. He realized that his mother's lessons had prepared him not just to lead a company, but to lead with wisdom, courage, and compassion. And in that hospital room, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a son finally understood the true depth of his mother's strength and the legacy she had quietly built. The morning sun shone brightly over Sunex Global Holdings, illuminating the towering glass structure that had been the stage for recent drama. The staff moved with a mixture of curiosity and cautious optimism. Whispers of Brenda's fall from grace still lingered, and everyone wondered what would come next. At the company gate, Tunde, the former security officer, approached quietly. His uniform was crisp, his posture confident, yet his face bore the humility of a man who valued respect above position. As he walked, staff members watched in surprise. Many had thought he would never return after being unfairly fired. Mama Grace, still recovering from her surgery, but eager to see justice done, was being wheeled through the compound by Amaka. When Tunde appeared, her eyes lit up. "My son," she called softly, her voice filled with relief. Tunde smiled warmly. "Mama Grace," he said, bowing slightly. "I am back, as promised." The staff gathered around, murmuring in awe. They had all witnessed the injustice that led to his dismissal, and now the man who had acted with courage and dignity was returning. Amaka, standing beside Mama Grace, whispered, "I told you, Mama, true goodness can never be buried. It always finds a way back." Inside the building, Tunde's return was announced to the entire staff. Some employees clapped quietly, while others simply stared, realizing the gravity of what had happened. Even the executives who had initially supported Brenda looked uneasy, knowing that their authority had been challenged by someone of true integrity. Brenda, who had been in her office attempting to regain composure, was informed immediately. Her face turned red with anger and fear. She knew that Tunde's return meant her control was slipping further. When Tunde walked into the lobby, he maintained his calm demeanor. He did not shout or gloat. Instead, he offered polite greetings to his colleagues, showing that his strength was not in arrogance, but in humility. In a quiet moment, Joseph arrived, his expression resolute. "Tunde," he said firmly, "I want you to know that your bravery has not gone unnoticed. You defended my mother when no one else would. Today you are back not just as a security officer, but as an example of what integrity looks like." Tunde bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, sir. I only acted out of respect for your mother. That is all I have ever known, to honor those who deserve it, no matter the cost." The staff watched silently, inspired. In the weeks that followed, Tunde's return transformed the atmosphere in the company. Kindness, respect, and humility began to be valued over arrogance and status. The ripple effect of one man's courage was spreading, and the company was changing for the better. Even Brenda, once feared by all, began to understand the consequences of cruelty. Her pride had been shattered, and now she had to reconsider the way she led, or risk being left behind entirely. Mama Grace, observing quietly from her wheelchair, smiled softly. The lessons of dignity, courage, and integrity had begun to bear fruit. The atmosphere at Sunex Global Holdings had shifted dramatically. Where once fear ruled, now quiet respect and cautious optimism filled the halls. Brenda, the former executive manager, paced in her office, her hands trembling with frustration. Her once commanding presence now seemed fragile and hollow. She had underestimated Tunde, underestimated the people she sought to control, and underestimated the unseen hand of justice. Her pride had taken a serious blow, and she felt the sting of humiliation more sharply than ever. The phone on her desk rang. She picked it up quickly, expecting perhaps a sympathetic colleague or a report from her team. But the voice on the other line was calm, authoritative, and unmistakable. Joseph Adeoye, the son of Mama Grace. "Brenda," Joseph said firmly, "I want to speak with you about your behavior. Your actions have caused pain, fear, and chaos in this company. Your treatment of Mama Grace and Tunde was unacceptable. Brenda's voice faltered. Sir, no excuses, Joseph interrupted. You have been given power, but power without respect and humility is nothing. I am giving you a choice. Reflect and improve or face permanent removal from this company. Her face turned pale. This was the moment she had dreaded. Brenda realized that her control over the floor, her authority, and her status were meaningless without integrity. The company was no longer hers to manipulate. Word quickly spread among the staff. Whispers filled the corridors. The manager was being held accountable. Employees who had once feared her now felt relief, even empowerment. Tunde and Amaka exchanged quiet smiles, understanding that justice was unfolding in a way that respected dignity rather than vengeance. Joseph arranged a private meeting with Brenda in the boardroom. She entered reluctantly, her heels clicking nervously against the polished floor. He looked at her steadily. Brenda, he began, your arrogance has hurt many, but it is not too late to change. True leadership requires humility, empathy, and respect. You will be monitored closely. Any further acts of cruelty will result in immediate termination. Brenda swallowed hard, the weight of her actions pressing on her chest. For the first time, she truly understood that wealth, status, and authority meant nothing if wielded without conscience. Outside the office, staff watched as Brenda emerged, her expression subdued. She no longer projected the arrogance that had once intimidated them. Many whispered that this was the beginning of a change, one that could bring balance to a workplace that had been tainted by pride. Mama Grace, resting quietly nearby, smiled softly. She had endured insults, cruelty, and hardship, yet she had remained steadfast. The company, the people, and even Brenda herself were beginning to see the fruits of patience, dignity, and integrity. Tunde, standing at the gate, nodded silently. The path to justice had been long and difficult, but it was now clear that kindness and courage could reshape even the most corrupted of hearts. Weeks passed after Tunde's reinstatement and Brenda's reckoning. The atmosphere in Sunex Global Holdings had shifted completely. Respect, humility, and cooperation began to replace fear, arrogance, and manipulation. Yet, beneath the surface, many still whispered about the mysterious son of Mama Grace, Joseph Adeoye. Few had ever seen him within the company, and his presence had always been quiet, observing from the shadows. One morning, the receptionist, Amaka, noticed a different energy at the front gate. The staff murmured as a sleek black car approached the entrance. From inside, a man stepped out, tall and confident, his eyes kind yet commanding. His gaze swept over the compound with quiet authority. It was Joseph. He walked toward the gate where Tunde was stationed. The staff could hardly believe their eyes. The son of Mama Grace, who had been hidden in plain sight, was none other than the CEO of the company itself. Mama Grace, Joseph said gently, kneeling slightly as he greeted his mother, who had been slowly recovering from her surgery. How are you today? Mama Grace's eyes widened with surprise and pride. My son, this is, Joseph smiled softly. I wanted the right time to reveal myself. Today, the company and its people have learned lessons that money, status, or authority could never teach them. You, Mama, and those like Tunde and Amaka have shown courage, integrity, and humility. That is the real wealth of Sunex Global Holdings. Tunde stood proudly, realization dawning on him. So you are the CEO? Joseph nodded. Yes. And now it is time for the company to understand that leadership is not about fear, arrogance, or appearances. It is about justice, respect, and empowering others to act with integrity. News of Joseph's revelation spread quickly. Staff members who had once sneered at Mama Grace or Tunde were stunned. The same people who had humiliated others now realized the depth of their misjudgment. Many felt shame, others relief, but all understood that true leadership had quietly been among them all along. Brenda, overhearing the news, turned pale. Her arrogance had blinded her to reality. The very person she had disrespected, the son of the old cleaner she despised, was the man who held the company's highest power. Joseph walked calmly through the corridors, greeting staff politely, showing that respect and kindness were not just words but actions. He stopped to shake Tunde's hand firmly. "You have shown loyalty and courage, Tunde," Joseph said. "That is why you are not only respected but valued. Your role here is more than security. You are a guardian of dignity." Mama Grace, sitting in her wheelchair, smiled warmly. She had endured hardship, insult, and even injury, but her faith in humanity had never wavered. Today, her son's revelation proved that integrity and love had power far greater than wealth or status. For the staff of Sunex Global Holdings, the world had changed. No longer would arrogance and cruelty dominate. Now, kindness, courage, and respect would shape their workplace. With Joseph Adeoye now openly revealed as the CEO, Sunex Global Holdings underwent a transformation unlike anything the staff had ever seen. The atmosphere that had once been dominated by fear, arrogance, and cold authority began to warm with respect, fairness, and teamwork. Tunde returned to his post at the gate, but his role had expanded beyond security. He became a mentor and example to the staff, showing that courage, humility, and integrity were more powerful than any title. Staff members who had once avoided him out of fear now sought his guidance, listening carefully to his advice on both professionalism and human decency. Brenda, the former manager, was placed under close supervision. Her arrogance and cruelty had been checked, but the real test lay ahead. Could she change? Slowly, she began attending leadership workshops, learning the value of empathy, fairness, and humility. She had been humbled, but the lessons she learned would shape her if she chose to embrace them. The company culture shifted in ways that could be felt immediately. Meetings were no longer dominated by fear or harsh criticism. Constructive feedback replaced insults, and teamwork flourished. Employees began helping each other, understanding that success was not a solitary achievement, but the result of collaboration, trust, and mutual respect. Amaka, the young receptionist who had risked everything to save Mama Grace, was now a symbol of integrity within the company. Her courage and selflessness inspired others to act with kindness, regardless of rank or status. She often walked the corridors with Mama Grace, sharing small acts of compassion, reminding the staff that greatness is measured by the way one treats others. Mama Grace, though still recovering from her surgery, became a frequent presence in the company. Her wisdom guided decisions, and her humble demeanor reminded everyone of the values upon which Joseph now insisted the company would be built: respect, integrity, and kindness. Even small acts of respect began to ripple across the organization. Security guards were acknowledged, cleaners were appreciated, and interns were mentored with patience. The culture of fear was replaced by one of empowerment, and employees who once hesitated to speak now voiced ideas, concerns, and feedback with confidence. Tunde, standing by the gate one morning, watched as staff smiled and greeted each other warmly. He turned to Joseph, who had arrived quietly to observe. "Sir, the company feels alive," Tunde said softly. Joseph nodded. "It is alive because it is guided by humanity, Tunde. Power without kindness is empty. But with compassion, integrity, and courage, it grows strong, just as people do." From the ground floor to the executive offices, Sunex Global Holdings had been reborn. The lesson was clear. A company is only as strong as the hearts of the people who run it, and true greatness comes from lifting others, not crushing them. The weeks following Joseph Adeoye's revelation as CEO had transformed Sunex Global Holdings into a model of integrity and respect. Employees moved confidently through the halls, offering kindness and support to one another. The lessons learned from Mama Grace, Tunde, and Amaka had spread throughout the company, leaving an atmosphere of hope, courage, and dignity. One bright morning, Joseph called for a company-wide gathering in the main hall. The staff assembled, curious and eager, wondering what their new CEO had planned. At the front, Joseph stood beside Mama Grace, who, though still recovering from her surgery, sat proudly in her wheelchair. Tunde and Amaka flanked them, representing the bravery and integrity that had inspired the entire company. Joseph addressed the crowd, his voice calm yet commanding. Today, we celebrate not only the growth of this company, but the values that make it strong. Wealth, status, and position can never replace integrity, courage, and respect. Each of you plays a part in this transformation. He paused, scanning the room. I also want to acknowledge those who have shown extraordinary character. Tunde, for his unwavering loyalty and courage. Amaka, for her selflessness and bravery. And most importantly, Mama Grace, whose wisdom and humility have been our guiding light. These individuals remind us that true power lies not in fear or pride, but in honor, kindness, and heart. Applause erupted throughout the hall, filling the room with energy and gratitude. Even Brenda, now subdued and reflective, stood quietly, realizing the enormity of the lessons she had learned. For the first time, she understood that respect is earned, not demanded. Joseph smiled and continued. To commemorate this turning point, we will institute a new program. Every act of integrity and kindness will be recognized and celebrated. We will mentor our employees, support their growth, and reward those who uphold these values. This is the legacy we will build together. Later, a small celebration took place. Staff members laughed and shared stories, the previous tension and fear replaced by camaraderie and trust. Mama Grace, watching with a gentle smile, whispered to Tunde, "See, my son, goodness always finds its way. Even the smallest acts can change the world." Tunde nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Yes, Mama. Today we have all learned that dignity, courage, and kindness matter more than wealth or status." As the sun set over the city, Joseph looked out the window, satisfied. The company he inherited had become more than a business. It had become a community built on integrity and heart. And for Mama Grace, Tunde, and Amaka, justice had been served not through vengeance, but through the quiet triumph of virtue. The story of humiliation, courage, and revelation ended in celebration, a reminder that true greatness is measured not by what you possess, but by the lives you uplift and the hearts you inspire.
Subscribe for more content.